mas maiintindihan po natin yung passage kung babalikan natin itong chapter 28, 1 to 3. Papasahin ko. In the 5th month of that same year, the 4th year, early in the year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, the prophet Hananiah, son of Azur, who was from Gibeon, said to me in the house of the Lord, in the presence of the priests and all the people, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. I will break the yoke of the king of Babylon within 2 years. I will bring back to this place all the articles of the Lord's house that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, removed from here and took to Babylon. Nagkaroon ng confrontation itong si Hananiah, who was also a prophet, and Jeremiah. Hananiah gave a prophecy. And the prophecy was, in 2 years' time, God is going to restore you back, bring you out of the exile, and return you to this place. In 2 years. And all the things that were stolen, all the people who were forced to slavery, everything will be recovered in just 2 years. The tens and thousands of people in Babylon will be coming home soon. Napakagandang prophecy. 2 years lang ang exile. Bakit sila na-exile? They were sinning. They were living their lives apart from God. They were steeped into idolatry. And despite the many warnings of the prophets, they would not obey. Kanya dumating ang judgment ng Panginoon. Napakagandang pakinggan itong mensahe ni Hananiah. Very popular. At yun ang gusto ng mga maraming preachers ngayon. When they preach what will be popular. What will gain them support. But God actually has other plans. Speaking through Jeremiah, God says to Hananiah, you have made these people trust in a lie. Hananiah, nagsisinungaling ka. Then comes the message from God. Ito yung mensahe through Jeremiah. This is what the Lord says. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my gracious promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. And I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. Ano yung mensahe? You are going to be in exile for 70 years. You are going to die. And maybe some of your children are going to die in Babylon. Yan ang mensahe ng Panginoon. But at the same time, He was admonishing them to settle in. Marry in Babylon. Mag-asawahan kayo. Have sons and daughters. In other words, the message was, make the best of where you are. Move on. Adjust. Pray. Pray even for the authorities in Babylon. Praying at the same time for deliverance. So it was into this kind of despair that Jeremiah offered the promise, I know the plans I have for you, plans for your welfare, and not for your harm, to give you a future and a hope. So nakita po natin ngayon, yung tamang konteksto. The good news and the bad news. The good news was that it would only be 70 years. 70 years. Good news na yun. Not forever. Although most of the people who heard that prophecy would no longer be alive by then. God was telling them that after 70 years of a captivity, He would give them a hope and a future. And that God had laid out a wonderful plan for them. And their children, they would prosper. They would have a good future. But again, only after 70 years. Anong mensahe nito sa atin? Well, firstly, God has a plan for each of us. Merong plano ng Panginoon para sa lahat sa atin. In fact, even before we came into existence, meron ang blueprint ng Panginoon para sa ating buhay. Psalm 139 verse 16, You saw me even before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. Hindi lang great plan ito. God longs for the fulfillment. He desires the fulfillment of His perfect plans and purposes in our lives for His glory. At ang tanong sa atin ay, nasaan ako sa lahat ng plano ng Panginoon? Where am I in God's plan? Am I in that circle? Am I in the center of God's plan? May plano ang Panginoon sa bawat isa sa atin. May blueprint siya. Subalit, kalakip niyan ay yung ating free will. We make choices. God created us people who are capable of making choices. We are not robots. We can turn to the left or we can turn to the right. When we follow His will and when we yield to His Lordship, then we experience the best that God has for us. And God's wonderful plan for us is accomplished. However, importante po ito, even if we live in obedience, and even if we live a life that is fully yielded to Christ, it does not guarantee that we will be spared from pain and suffering and testings and disappointments. Haharapin pa rin po natin yan. And we have several examples of these in the Scriptures. Si Apostol Pablo, ilang hirap ang dinanas ni Pablo. Si Joseph, Alam na alam natin ang storya ni Joseph. What about si David? Inanoint na siya. He was to be king, and yet for 10 years he lived a life of a fugitive. And only after 10 years was he able to be on that throne.